Oh, God, Christ, Grandpa, don't get the marinade again. What? Oh, greetings, my greasy gang. Sugar Pants here on this spooky moonlit night with another wolfy widget for you. 1988's Lone Wolf. Naturally, the 80s were a fun time for werewolf movies because everyone already had a ton of hair, so it made the transformation sequences a little bit easier for the special effects crew. But how does this Canis Chronicle compare to the dozens of werewolf movies the 80s hit us with? Let's bask in the light of the full moon while our puppy pal Abraxas sinks his teeth into that sleaze docket.
Fantastic transition as always. We have 8 dead bodies, 5 cups blood, 0 naked breasts, scratched font opening credits. Kind of cliche for a werewolf movie, but at least they're blue and white instead of red. Gratuitous camera wipes, shitty 80s hairband, 1 braided rat tail, 1 pair silk jammies, 80s hacking. What was that cliche? Ready or not, here I come cliche. You better take a look at this cliche. Let's split up cliche. I have a bad feeling about this cliche. Audible snapping branch cliche. But it happens in a back alley in the city, so it's really weird. Panicked car key fumbling cliche. Car won't start cliche. Ominous pill usage cliche. Ominous coughing cliche. Indeterminate claw scratchy. Face scratchy. Gurgling throat slashy. Off-camera screaming death. Wolf claw impalement. Wolf claw impalement lift. 2 heartectomies. 1 faceectomy. 1 headectomy. Bullet-riddled werewolf. Grizzled old man cockblockery. Nosy teacher cockblockery. And Mr. Peanut cameo appearance.
Our movie begins with, what else? A shot of the full moon. A sudden werewolf claw appears and, did the werewolf just steal the moon? Bastard must be enormous. I didn't know this was going to be a kaiju movie. We cut to a middle-aged couple parked up on Makeout Point trying to reignite their failed marriage. Oh, wait. This is what the movie expects us to believe are students. Julie says no, but Skip says, come on. Something's peeping on them from the trees, and we get the growling, snarling POV shot to prove it. Since he ain't getting any nookie, Skip insists on driving home, but Julie says he's had alcohol, so he's not driving her car. And that's his breaking point, so Skip packs up his blue balls and bails. Julie calls out to him, but he doesn't answer, so she drives off in a huff. And now that they've split up, time for someone to die. The werewolf, or hairy goblin thing, it's kind of hard to see. It gets a good swipe in, and Skip gets a screaming off-camera death. Elsewhere in town, there's a rockin' group of middle-aged hairspray enthusiasts jamming out on stage. And they actually don't sound terrible.
There was no fire in them anyway. That's not us, we like the music loud.
This is Eddie. He's just your average teen in this boring town, trying to make it in the spotlight, but he's got an attitude that causes him to butt heads with everyone. Oh, those teenage hormones. And holy hell, look who's at the club!
What, this? This is just to keep the flies down.
What is it with this dude in crappy werewolf movies? Next morning, Eddie gets up for breakfast and his aunt wants to talk about the call she got from his probation officer. She reminds him the deal is he attends school every day. This breakfast exposition dump also lets us know they recently moved to the area. Out in the woods, the local cops have discovered Skip's mangled corpse, and the Sarge is insistent that they keep a lid on it as to not panic the local town. We meet up with some members of the Rotary Club. I mean, more teenagers. Seriously, did every kid in this district get held back 15 years or something? And we get a whole long sequence of these kitty cosplayers trying their best to convince us that they're not old enough to start considering getting that first colonoscopy. And thanks to all the budding puberty hormones, they're all on edge, and eventually a fight breaks out. Thankfully, a teacher steps up to put a stop to it, and since he's about 8 years older than the students, they recognize him as an authority figure. Anyway, the police are heading to Skip's house to inform his parents that he's no longer a member of the Oxygen Enthusiasts Club.
Are you Mr. Harmon?
Yeah, I'm Dan Harmon.
Over at the school, Deirdre is giving Eddie the goo-goo eyes. Or maybe she's just unable to stop glaring at his huge fucking head.
Look at the size of that boy's head. Shh. I'm not kidding, it's like an orange on a toothpick.
You're gonna give the boy a complex.
Well, that's a huge noggin. It's a virtual planetoid. Has its own weather system.
The kids are wound pretty tight, so it doesn't take much for another fight to break out. Mr. Simmons breaks it up, again, and gives a quick lecture about acting civilized. But he's got to take a quick pill from his pocket. Right, so he's totally the werewolf, right? It's nighttime, and apparently the second night of the full moon. One of our horny seniors breaks away from the group to go chase after Deirdre. Unfortunately, he doesn't get too far before he has to check on some snarling from the alleyway.
Oh, shit!
He runs like 3 feet away and seems surprised that the werewolf caught up to him. He gets his throat slashed, and he's shoved to the ground. And if we didn't have enough family drama with his aunt, Eddie runs into his alcoholic uncle out front of the bar.
You know, if you'd study a little bit, you might get yourself a decent job.
So I could end up like you?
Look, pal, there's nothing wrong with what I do.
Absolutely. There's no shame in man whoring, especially with that adorable little schnauzer face he's got. But Eddie gets a little bit of good news. Vince, the nightclub owner, and clearly not a werewolf, says he's booking the gang for the next month and tossing in 20% of the cover charge. He should be happy, but Eddie decides this is his moment to audition for Team America World Police.
You guys are good. You're gonna go somewhere.
Matt Damon.
Seriously, why the fuck does he look so much like one of the puppets? Deirdre is looking for a little revenge after she got roughed up during yesterday's fight and tells a classmate to meet up with her.
I like the woods. There's more privacy, you know?
Right, so she's totally the werewolf, right? The dude heads out into the woods and parks in apparently the only makeout point in town and calls out for Deirdre. And since it's day 3 of the full moon, the werewolf attacks. The dude gets away, but does the whole panicky, key fumbling move and gets a pretty cool wolf claw stab and toss. The police sergeant is attempting to calm the public's fears over the recent dog attacks that have been happening. He sounds pretty convincing until a drunk Dan Harmon crashes the event.
I want you to feed me a peanut and watch me die by a river.
But then Mr. Simmons addresses the class.
This has been a very tragic week. Skip Harmon meant so much to all of us.
And with all this death and despair, no one in town noticed the full moon stubbornly refusing to wane. Someone really should look into that. I'm sure that's the kind of shit they wrote about in Revelations. Now, goddammit, if massive time jumps is acceptable, then why is this the first time we've done this shit? Anyway, now that we've introduced the whole story, the rest of the movie is basically Julie and Joel working on trying to figure out the mystery. They team up with other students, a few more people are killed by the werewolf, and the whole story comes to a head during the winter costume ball, or whatever the hell this is. I guess the werewolf got tired of picking off stragglers from the edge of town and just attacks the most crowded event possible. But Joel was smart enough to pack some silver bullets. The werewolf is shot and killed, and thankfully transforms in front of a crowd, so there's no possible way anyone is still guessing who the werewolf is. But it's a horror movie in the 80s, which means we've got to give the monster one last crack at it. We cut to a hospital where one of the winter ball victims is getting treated for their wounds. They start growing some nasty claws, a little bit of fur, and we We roll the credits. Naturally, I skipped the hell out of the last hour of this movie because I don't want to spoil too much of it. Lone Wolf isn't a bad movie. It's actually quite well made. Well made for a movie that ends up on my show. I found it somewhat entertaining in spite of its faults. But most of those faults are that we're supposed to believe that a group of 30 or 40-somethings are college kids or whatever. I actually don't recall them ever explicitly saying whether it's high school or college. Seems like anytime the subject comes up, they just say school. And I don't know about you, but I've never heard anyone call it school instead of college when speaking in general terms. Oh, sure, you might say, hey, I went to Harvard Law. What school did you go to? But never, why weren't you in school today, young man? This one was written by Michael Kruger, who also wrote Mind Killer, which I reviewed in year 3. And it's definitely a big step up in quality in almost every aspect. Except for trash. I was a little disappointed this one didn't get nearly trashy enough. The only skin we got was a little unnecessary bra flash.
Joel.
Sorry.
And the gore didn't get too great until the end. To be honest, this one feels a lot closer to a middle-range horror studio than the extremely low-budget Mind Killer. But it was the same studio behind both movies. So in that aspect, I'm really glad I made the decision to give them a second chance. But even though the quality is better, I still kind of preferred Mind Killer's story to Lone Wolf's retread of a bog-standard werewolf story. One of my major issues is that it totally relies on prior werewolf movies. And what I mean by that is, the whole movie requires the audience to already know Hollywood's established werewolf lore. Silver bullets, full moon, that sort of stuff. Lone Wolf does nothing to make their werewolf movie unique. Hell, they don't even give us that whole let's research what it is we're dealing with trope where the kids go look for some dusty book in the forbidden section of the library or whatever. Everyone in this world knows what a werewolf is, and nobody seems to be too freaked out over one actually existing in their town. And for as much as I ended up liking it, it's really just a shame that this is such a standard werewolf story. People get killed, authorities can't figure it out, it's a mystery over who the werewolf ends up being, and the kids have to figure it out. Though it's not that hard to guess if you're even half paying attention. Although, at the end, when the werewolf is killed and reverts back to human form, it felt like it was supposed to be some big Scooby-Doo reveal. And all I could think of was, who the fuck was that? Oh yeah. And speaking of the moon, I always get a kick out of werewolf movies that go with the light of the full moon tradition, yet don't understand that the moon has a full cycle. This movie specifically points out that over the course of a single week, 3 different people are murdered over 3 different evenings. Full moons happen once approximately every 29.5 days. And if there's one thing I don't need in my horror movies, it's a pissed off Neil deGrasse Tyson dropping in for an actually. On a technical level, the worst I could say really for this one is that the acting can get a little cringe at times. But mostly the actors all play it straight. Which is why I found it so damn funny. And I've always preferred a movie that tried to be serious and failed over something like Sharknado that's just trying to be ridiculous on purpose. So I'll definitely recommend this one if you're out for a silly movie marathon with your friends. It's a fun time and isn't at all complicated, so you don't have to pay super close attention to enjoy it. Which means this one is a prime candidate for some good old-fashioned MST3K style riffing. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to suggest that if Lone Wolf was on the original run of MST3K, it would be on a lot of fans' top 5 episodes. It feels like it's right smack dab in that sweet spot where it's a watchable bad movie rife with material so the riffs enhance the movie, as opposed to something like Monster A Go-Go where the riffs make the terrible movie tolerable to sit through. So with that dusky lunar legend laminated, it's time for me to leave. And until I darken your doorstep with another dank drama from the dark places, this is your canine compatriot Sugar Pants. See you in your dreams.
Hey, Jack, isn't that your kid out there?
Oh, shit. That's his nephew. His parents were killed.